Good morning, everybody, and welcome aboard the Skyship's hot air balloon sunrise safari. And we have just taken off a couple of minutes ago from the Skyship's base camp, which is just adjacent to the Mara River. And we are now floating effortlessly over the plains, heading towards the Mara River in the Greater Mara National Reserve. Now, this is one of the best ways to experience the Mara Triangle in particular, because it is a lot of no off-road driving zone. This is probably the best way to view it from the sky, and we get a bird's eye view over the animals, over the scenery, and it is absolutely amazing. Now, Ginger, thank you for sending in your comment already. Good morning from Louisiana. Well, Ginger, straight back at you. Good morning from Kenya, just 1 degree south of the equator. And in the Mara Triangle, look at those topi running around in the early morning with the pilot using his expert skills to keep the basket very close to the ground and at times just tipping the tops of the grasses. Now, this is coming to you live from Kenya, and it is an amazing experience to have you with us, and I'm sure we are going to have a wonderful morning's safari. Please send through your questions and your comments and get involved on this hot air balloon sunrise safari with us as we keep floating over the plains. Happy, thanks for your comment. Yes, this is how you want to see the animals. Sorry, not Happy, Pappy. This is how we like to see it too. Without the noise of the vehicle and with us just floating like a bird. We can see the gazelle there, the Thompsons, and just going about their business. We are expecting to see some herds of elephant and buffalo. As we head now towards the Mara River, we can see some of the other hot air balloons also getting up a little bit later than us, but we're up there, and there we look towards the Olololo escarpment, and out to the left of that is towards the Tanzanian border. Now, there's a lovely specimen of a topi, and they're going about their territorial business, probably now very early in the morning, chasing other males and trying to keep their little spot of grass where they can try and attempt to lure some females into their little patch. But it is absolutely amazing to see the game paths of the elephant and the hippo from this bird's eye view. And as I say, it is something very special because we don't get to see this kind of impression from the vehicles. And so as we start to gain altitude, it is very apparent of the vastness and utter beauty of the Maasai Mara. Now, Andre, thanks for your comment. What an amazing view. And you're watching from Argentina. Wow. Well, we very humbly accept you with us on the basket. Even though it is only on a reality show, we would love to have you with us in real life at some stage. But look out there. There's an impala with such a beautiful set of horns. Some of the largest set of horns that you will find on any impala anywhere in the world, because here they have absolutely stunning sets of horns. Now, looking out over there, we're once again looking towards the Mara River. At some stage, we will be going above them, but that all depends on the wind, because remember that with a hot air balloon, the pilot only has the ability to control up and down, and you are totally at the mercy of the wind. So the left and right, side to side, is all pressed by the wind, and so the very talented pilot just controls it by going up and down. And there is really, we need to mention the guys that are on the ground waiting to see exactly where the balloon is going to land, and then they need to set up their champagne breakfast. And so I wouldn't like to be him trying to judge where the balloon is exactly going to land. But a lovely small group of topi there with a little youngster. And look how close we are actually getting to them. That is unbelievable, because the pilot is keeping the basket very close to the ground, and these animals sometimes do get a bit skittish around the balloon, but for the moment it seems that they're quite relaxed. Nice and early in the morning, in that first golden light. The sun is still yet to pop up over the horizon, so we're still just getting that golden glow before the sun actually rises. Once again there, looking towards the Olololo escarpment. Now, Ellen, thanks for your question. You want to know how high do we think we're off the ground? We're only about 10 meters off the ground, but it does vary as the pilot needs to judge in advance, I must say. It's not as easy as him just pushing up and down like he would in a helicopter or an aeroplane. He needs to judge how he's going to work his elevation, because once he burns the gas with the butane and the flames that come with it, it takes a little bit of a while before it actually takes effect. So he needs to work in advance in burning that gas, and so then you do start lifting up later. Now look on top of that balanites tree. There looks to be a bird of prey. I wonder what it is. It's a little bit far to see from here, but still nice for us to be able to see. Even the little birds, well, they seem little from here, but I'm sure that is a rather large bird. As we scan across, we can see how this particular area is grazed quite heavily by the plains game, and including those Thompson's gazelle, and that's why the grass is rather short here. But as we move towards the Mara River and the swampy areas, we will start to see a lot longer grass, but in this area it has been nicely grazed. And this is also the area where we have been finding the marsh breakaway and marsh pride of lions. So who knows, we might be lucky in that we spot one of them from up here in the hot air balloon. And every now and then you're going to start to see, especially once we gain altitude, these circles that are formed by the termites, which makes for the grass not growing anywhere in that particular area. And so from the sky it almost seems like fairy circles, and very beautiful to see. But this is also the position from which the topi and the lions gain a little bit of elevation to look out and use it as a lookout point. And so it is useful for not only those animals, but also the animals in the area. Now, Anne, you want to know if the balloon moves faster when you're higher up, and it does depend on all the conditions of the day. But generally, yes, there is a little bit more movement of air the higher you go up. But as I say, this pilot is a real expert in judging the movement of air and which way the wind currents are moving for the day. Just before takeoff, every day the pilot has a little balloon that he fills with helium, and before we take off he lets this little balloon go to see exactly which way the air is moving and how fast the wind is, and taking all those safety considerations into account. It's a little bit like base jumpers that also just throw a stone or a balloon just to check the wind as it moves through the air, because obviously the wind is not visible to the human eye, so we do need something moving up there to be able to see which way it is going. But you can see there's a little bit of clouds around this morning. It's going to make for a beautiful sunrise with lots of golden color. There is the treed line of the Mara River, and very heavily vegetated by a lot of large trees. And I'm sure we're going to be drifting towards that with the wind seeming like it's taking us in that southerly direction, a little bit of a southeasterly direction, if I must. And there's a bird of prey that's flown off from that Balanetese, probably also thinking that this is a really strange, round bird of prey. And off he goes. And there's another one on the top of that shepherd's tree. I wonder if it is... that's either a black-breasted or chested snake eagle or a martial eagle. It's a bit difficult to tell how large it is, but still beautiful to see them from this perspective. Normally we'd be looking at them from below, but now from above, it does give us just a totally different view of them completely. And we will see a lot of these paths that go through very well walked and trodden by hippos and elephants on their daily movements. A lot of times it is from the hippos who are coming out on an eveningly basis, coming out to graze in these plains in search of the very nutritious grass. And there, I think, from this perspective, I think that might be a martial eagle. We would have to see if there's no feathers on the legs, and it looks like they are feathered all the way down to the bottom, because remember that a black-chested snake eagle, very similar in coloration to that of a martial eagle, but they would have bare yellow legs as well as a yellow eye. So I think that was a martial eagle. There we scan across once again, looking at the balloons, the other ones who now have also taken off and seemingly following exactly the same direction as us, because the wind is once again taking us all at its mercy. Now, Catherine, you're saying that it's quite a foggy morning. Would it make that more difficult to spot the predators? Catherine, it's not really foggy. I know it's given that a little bit of that impression, but it's just because the sun had not come up yet, and so it was a little bit hazy. But now that we've got the sun coming up over there, we should start to have a lot more light shone on the plains here, and it should start clearing up a little bit as well. That's the bonus also of being on the hot air balloons. We do get out before the sun comes up. Normally we're only allowed into the park at sunrise, and there, what a beautiful sunrise it is. Looking out over the Mara plains onto the other side of the Mara River. What a beautiful morning, everybody. Look at those golden colors reflecting off the clouds. It really makes for a very beautiful occasion. So that is on the eastern side of the Mara River into the greater Mara National Reserve. And over on that side is where we have a bigger concentration of predators such as cheetah, which we don't often get to see on this side in the Mara Triangle. But you can see perfectly now that the plains here between the Olololo escarpment and the Mara River, and we're drifting ever so slowly. It's quite a calm morning, and so it's not a really fast flight this morning, but I'm sure we're going to get to see a lot of the herd animals soon as we start to drift towards the swampy areas. That's where the elephants have been hanging out, and a lot of buffalo as well. As we pan towards the south there, once again getting those hot air balloons into the picture, and so you get a real idea of the kind of picture where we are sitting. We're looking at other ones. Now, Sina, you want to know if we would be able to go over the hyena den that I often visit. I think at the rate that we're going, I don't think we're going to make it that far, because off to the right of your picture and towards the Tanzanian border is where that hyena den is, but it is quite far. So We'll see what happens. Sometimes the wind does pick up as the sun comes up and there's a little bit of heat cast onto the ground. That can very easily make for a lot of movement of air and wind. So we might pick up pace, and who knows, we might get there. But for the time being, it doesn't look like we might make it that far. Vanessa, thank you for your comment, saying that an African sunrise is very special, but how better to experience it than from a hot air balloon? This is really a once-in-a-lifetime experience, folks, and I have very luckily been able to do this a few times now, and I really recommend it to anybody if they are visiting Africa or coming to the Maasai Mara and the Mara Triangle in particular. This Skyship's hot air balloon really gets us into places that you cannot access by road or by vehicle, and this bird's eye view is something absolutely spectacular. And sometimes the pilot, you will see, he takes us up very high, gaining a lot of altitude, getting a bird's eye view over the entire area, but then very expertly also brings us very close down to the ground, giving us a totally different perspective and almost from the animal's eye view. And so it's really very special because you're just drifting ever so quietly just over the plains. The only noise that you hear is every now and then the pilot burning off that gas just to keep us above the ground, a very necessary evil, but it just adds to the whole atmosphere, and it does keep you quite warm in that basket as well. It's like standing near to an open fire. Now, Nina, you want to know what is my favorite thing to watch from the balloon? Nina, that is coming up shortly when we start to go over the Mara River. That is my favorite thing to look at from the basket of the hot air balloon, because we don't get to see it anywhere near the kind of perspective that we get from the hot air balloon. And so we're floating over the river and we see the crocodiles and the hippos, where normally we would only go in the vehicle and be able to see them, if we're lucky, from the bank. And so with the hot air balloon, it's really something special. And so it will come up in the next few minutes, so don't go anywhere, because I'm sure we're going to be drifting over the Mara River with the direction that we are going at the moment. Now, Raylene, you'd like to know if we've had recent rains. Raylene, you will start to see, as we gain some altitude there, that it is very wet in this particular area. It's the swampy area that we're going over or starting to move towards now. And yes, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, for 2 or 3 days, we had very good rains. Each evening it really bucketed it down. So there, as we start to gain altitude, you can see how wet it is actually. And Jamie and myself have been having a lot of fun passing the badge of getting stuck around, because both of us have been very well stuck in the mud and these slippery, sloshy roads that you can see. They're not all accessible at the moment because of the amount of rain that we've had. So we do need to be a little bit careful. And of late, we've actually had to stick to the main roads where it's a little bit more solid, because this is a lot of black cotton soils, which, if you don't know, is a very particular clay type soil, and it's not very well drained. So when it rains, it becomes totally waterlogged and very conducive to getting stuck, and also for leaving scars on the ground, because as soon as the sun comes out, then it bakes it into a hard concrete. And so that is also the reason why we are not allowed to drive off-road in the Mara Triangle. But look at that, the sun now getting up. Now, Catherine, thanks for your comment, saying that it looks like it's going to be such a gorgeous day. Well, Catherine, I can tell you that it is already gorgeous. And if it gets any better than this, well, I will be very happy indeed. And looking out over there, looks like It's a couple of egrets that are now heading out on their daily business. They've been roosting up all night in a tree, and I'm sure they're now heading towards finding a herd of buffalo or even some rhino to go and follow and eat the insects as they're walking through the plains. So very easy to spot from a distance, a very white color of the egrets. Now, Colleen, you'd like to know how long does an average balloon ride last? Colleen, it is obviously changeable. It's all dependent on the conditions, but normally they judge it at around the hour mark. So that's from takeoff to landing. You normally have within the region of between 45 minutes and an hour and 15 minutes, all dependent on the conditions. But in general, it's around an hour of actual airtime. And then once you land, there is a team waiting for you, and they transport you just a little way to normally a nice viewpoint or a very clear area, and you have an amazing champagne breakfast waiting for you. And so the experience does not end with the hot air balloon. It does go on to the whole experience of breakfast in the bush, and still experiencing the whole feel of the Mara Triangle. Over there, that's one of the gates that leads into the Mara Triangle itself. And in this particular area, we have seen all sorts of amazing behavior from animals. We had some ground hornbills interacting with a palm nut vulture just recently. Normally big herds of buffalo, and over there towards that lugger is where we normally find the marsh breakaway pride of lions. So now we're really starting to get a perspective of where we generally see a lot of game on our game drives. Now I wonder what bird that is down there. It's quite far for us to see. Now, once again, at the moment, it's just a black dot. I don't know if it's maybe another martial eagle. At this perspective, looks like it might be, but we only see the back of him. It looks black on his back and white on his belly, so my best guess would be another martial eagle. Anna-Marie, you'd like to know how far we can actually see from the balloon. Anna-Marie, it always depends on the conditions, but this morning is relatively clear, and we can probably see for a minimum of about 50 kilometers. In miles, that would probably be around the 30-mile mark, maybe even a little more. We can really see quite far. And off there behind that balloon that we are looking at now, there's the granitic Inselbergs that we also do go towards when we're on game drive. And it is also adjacent to a lot of the river crossings. But near to those Inselbergs is where we find very special animals like the Kirk's dik-dik, and there can also be leopards in those areas, as well as the olive baboons. But there now we've got some nice altitude once again. You can see the kind of system that we're dealing with when we go out on game drive. Very big, large, open plains where you can see quite far. And in this particular plain, the grass is rather short. So if there were any predators around, you can see them quite easily. But then heading up towards the lugger. Now, Chris, thanks for your comments saying that you can really appreciate the area from this kind of height. Absolutely, Chris. It is totally stunning. And like I was saying, we look up towards those lugger areas, and that's where we'll try and find the predators. And I'm sure as we drift over them, we might be able to see some of those lions. Now, I'm just trying to work out whether that is a black-chested snake eagle or a martial eagle. We did see a martial eagle, and I'm wondering if it's not another one. I just can't see if there's any feathers on the legs, because it's difficult to judge the size from being quite far. Now, Archie, who is on the camera, has got a very good zoom there, and he's going right in. It looks like it might be a snake eagle, actually, now, but I still am struggling between the two. But nonetheless, it is a perfect view of this bird, if not a little bit far. Now, Karen, you want to know if if I've seen any nests from the balloon. Yes, I have, Karen, and mostly it's quite the larger nests. So I've seen some of the hammerkop nests, which are very big and conspicuous, so quite easy to spot. I've also seen some of the secretary birds' nests, who nest right on top of those trees on a nice flat platform, and some of the vultures as well, and eagles. And so it's normally those larger birds that we can spot, because it's generally from quite a distance, as you saw there with that snake eagle / martial eagle. It's easy for the cameraman to zoom in with his super zoom, but for the human eye, a little bit difficult to work out from a distance. But wonderful to see raptors and their nests from this kind of perspective. You see, we're going up and down as the pilot decides to give us a bigger view, or to get us closer to the ground for a better feel of the area. And a lot of those little holes with water in them can be created by buffalo and hippos, who will go and climb in a little puddle, and then they dig the mud out and they throw it over themselves. This is the buffalo in particular. And then they wallow in that mud, and they do make those holes larger and larger. And eventually, that can actually be the start of a pan or a little lake, because it might have started with a puddle and a warthog just putting his bottom in it and going off from there. And then a buffalo comes along and digs it out a little bit more, and then puts his much bigger rump in it, and making it larger and larger. Maybe then a whole herd of buffalo land up in it, and eventually you do start to have a little bit of a natural pond. But there's a lovely view of a lugger. Susan, thanks for your comment that you'd love to see that. Well, yes, we'll try and bring that kind of footage to you on a daily basis, and try and give you that succession of how the little pans and ponds are formed. We love to watch, especially the warthogs wallowing in the mud, but the buffalo are very adept at enjoying their time in the sun and in the mud. Now, Lynn, you want to know where are most of the lions found in the Mara? Well, Lynn, I'm going to show you in just a little while, because we're going to be drifting over one of these very big luggers. Now, a lugger is sort of the same as what we call in South Africa a donga, or a drainage line, an eroded area that's got a river running through it. And so we're going to be drifting towards that shortly, and then I'm going to be looking out and trying to spot some of the lions, because they do just try to take a little bit of cover, as Archie was looking there at that martial eagle / snake eagle. But there you can see this very big lugger, that a very big prominent feature within the plains. Those are the areas that we're going to be looking at for the lions. But looking up, we do see a bit of clouds around. It's not stormy or anything like that. Each evening here in this area, we do have buildup of clouds as it heats up in the midday, and then building of these big rain clouds, and very often then raining during the evening. Now, last night we didn't have any rain, so the clouds are still hanging around a little bit, but I'm sure as that sun gets up now into the middle of the sky, they might burn off and retract, but who knows? We'll see how the day progresses. But for now, we're just getting those beautiful rays coming through the clouds and making a lovely golden color. And in this direction, we're looking over the Mara River now, and it seems the wind is really teasing us with the Mara River. It's taking us a little bit towards it, and now it's pushed us a little bit away, back towards the Olololo escarpment. So maybe this morning we might not get that bird's eye view over the Mara River, but we'll see how we go. I'm sure wherever we are, it's going to be absolutely stunning nonetheless. And there's one of the main gravel roads that we use on game drives, cutting through that plain. And we definitely stay on those when it's very wet, because we do have less of a chance of getting stuck. Now, Andy, you're wondering if, because there's been so much rain, unseasonally, could it start the migration earlier than July? Well, Andy, anything's possible. We can't stop the animals. It just, because we say that they should start around July. So absolutely, it could trigger an earlier migration. It will just have to remain to be seen, because we wonder, maybe there will be more growth of grass. Maybe it will also start the birthing process a little bit earlier. Who knows? But we'll have to just wait and see. Now, there we see one of the very prominent luggers that come through this particular plain, heading down towards the Mara River, and that's where it will empty. But this is a particular area for the marsh breakaway pride. So let's keep our eyes open and see if we can spot any of those elusive lions. Normally a little bit contrasting in this green grass with their tawny color. They're more camouflage when they lie in the sort of browny, longer grass. And that's where they'll probably hunt a little bit better as well, because they can be seen quite easily, especially during the day. So that's also one of the reasons why lions will hunt at night, especially when they've got this contrasting tawny color on the green in this particular area. But those big groups of sort of bushy areas, that's where we would most likely see some leopards, and also where the black rhino like to hang out, especially once they've fed and they just want to relax. They'll go into a nice thicket area where they're surrounded by bushes, and they generally have a sleep. Although yesterday we saw 2 black rhino out in the middle of the plains, so going against all what we as humans believe black rhinos should be doing, normally in the thickets, eating twigs and leaves. Well, here in the Mara Triangle, it seems that they are predominantly grazers, which is totally against what we think black rhinos should be doing. But the Mara Triangle is very special indeed in the very nutritious grass that it makes available year on year, especially that red oat grass, or Tomedia triandra. Now, there we can see one of the little tracks that we use generally, but that's quite a difficult one, and we do need to be careful, because that is where we could quite easily get stuck. Now, Sandy, you want to know if the wildebeest migrate through this particular area. Sandy, yes, they will migrate into this particular area, and this is where they will then feed themselves up and eventually turn around and head back. But over on the left there, on the screen coming up now, that's where the Mara River is. And so that's where the famous crossings are, and the scene of great predator-prey interactions with the crocodiles waiting in the river for all the multitudes of animals to start crossing. And as they do, the crocodiles obviously pick off as they choose, and the lions wait on the opposite bank also, because these animals come through the crossing having survived the crocodiles waiting for them, and then they normally have to run through a bit of a bottleneck in terms of their exit out of the river, and that's where the lions wait, because they can then also take their pick of the animals coming through that bottleneck in that specific spot. So they can wait in ambush, and so the poor animals, they just survive the clutches of the crocodile and almost then get taken out by the lions waiting on the opposite bank. But there's so many animals of wildebeest, zebra, topi, and gazelle that going into their millions, that it's really difficult for the lions to even make an impact on the great numbers that do come through. One of the great shows of the natural world, the Great Migration, and this is the scene of it all. But at this time of year, it's pretty much emptied out of all those great herds of the African plains game. So at the moment, we do have an influx of a lot of big herds of elephant, who I think enjoy the solitude now that all the other animals have left and gone down towards Tanzania and the Serengeti. But we do have some of the smaller groupings of them just remain behind, almost going against the flow, saying, yeah, you lot can all disappear off down there. We'll stay here and enjoy the little bits of grass left for ourselves. But I did see at the top of the screen, as Archie now comes out again, there was a very big herd of, I believe, buffalo. There we go, at the top left of your screen, now in the middle. And that looks like a big herd of buffalo, I'm sure. And so there still are large groupings of animals around, but it's not the massive herds of the wildebeest and zebra and topi. Now we have the buffalo and the elephant in the area, which are probably the biggest herds at the moment. There, once again, another nice drainage line system, or lugger, lots of foresty or treed areas there. And once again, nice and easy to see the flocks of egrets off to find the buffalo. I'm sure they're heading towards that herd that we've just seen. And they would have identified that because that's good food for them. Sylvia, you'd like to know what time is it here? Sylvia, I don't know where you are in the world, but obviously we've just had sunrise and it's now heading towards 7:15, 7:15 in the morning. Where are you and what is the time where you are? We'd love to know. You see those egrets? I'm sure they are zoning in on the buffalo, heading straight towards that lovely big herd. Chris, you'd like to know how high do we think we are? Well, Chris, normally the hot air balloon can get to about 1,000 feet above the ground. I don't think we're that high at the moment. We're probably about 500 or 600 feet off the ground at the moment. So a beautiful bird's eye view over the area. And sometimes the camera doesn't really do it justice. You're just going to have to one day come out here and do it for yourself, because it's difficult to explain the real experience that is of being in a hot air balloon in a little basket, floating effortlessly over the Greater Mara Reserve. It is really a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And, well, lucky me, I've been able to do it a few times. And there, Archie is just scanning over the top of the Olololo escarpment. And for most of you, I know it is for me, a real tongue twister, that, the Olololo escarpment. I know it took me a while to get my mouth around that. But there we go. Looking up there in that area, that's at the base of the escarpment there, the area of the Sausage Tree Pride of lions. And you see now the wind taking us a little bit away from the Mara River. So we're actually perfectly running down the middle of the Mara Triangle, which is not such a bad thing, because we'll get a very good perspective of the exact area that we operate. There's an elephant. Lynn, thank you for your comment saying that this looks like a Rembrandt painting. It's almost everywhere we look is just postcard material and painting. And so thanks for your comment there, Lynn. As we see probably a lone bull elephant just grazing there. Kayleen, thanks for your comment saying that you love elephants. Well, I love elephants too, Kayleen, especially lone elephant bulls when they're not in must, because they're the most happy-go-lucky, carefree animals, I believe, in the world. They are just beautiful, either on foot or on vehicle or from a hot air balloon. Look at that. You'll see not much wafting of the ears so early in the morning. It's nice and cool. We're probably looking at about 15 or 16 degrees Celsius and probably mid 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's really cool. However, in the basket here is lovely and warm because it's right next to the burners, which doesn't burn you, but it does keep you nice and warm in the early morning. It's like having a lovely heater or an open fire that we're just standing next to. So everybody is very comfortable in the basket. No need for jackets or anything like that, as you would think, but with the burner keeping us nice and warm. Gina, you'd like to know about the camera, and is it mounted on the basket or is it handheld? Gina, it's actually, they call it a gimbal. Archie has got a very big, he looks a little bit like RoboCop. He's got a very big suit on him, and then it's to make it very stable, because obviously if it was mounted on the basket, it would be quite stationary and then would most likely have to be remotely controlled. And handheld would get very tiring for the cameraman, especially over an hour's time. Eventually you would start to see lots of shakes. So it is mounted basically on the cameraman's body. And as I say, looking a little bit like RoboCop, but and then he's shifting around as best he can, doing an absolutely amazing job of it, and trying to single out animals as they go through. So well done, Archie. Keep it up. We're really enjoying the view from you. Sometimes there you can see some of the plains games, trails and paths going through the grass here. Now you can see also that the grass here, a little bit longer than that area just at the start of the flight, as we left the area of the Kichwa airstrip. Here the grass starting to get quite a lot longer and better for hunting with the lions, but obviously not as well grazed. So that can be a little bit better for the lions because they have more cover. And we also are heading towards the swampy sort of area and the graveyard, as it's called. It's not the graveyard for the animals, but it's a Land Rover graveyard, because if you go in there after heavy rains, well, you might not see your Land Rover again. But there's some more herd or groups of elephant. And well, it looks a small group, but we are quite close to the ground now once again. And so we'll see if once we go up, maybe there's some more of them. I'm sure there are. And it seems like a small breeding herd. But maybe it's 3 males that are just enjoying each other's company. Difficult to tell from this distance, but still wonderful to see the elephants. And from above, because normally we're at eye level or lower. We're looking up at them most of the time, and now we get the chance to look down on them. And every now and then when we do get close to some of the elephants, they get rather nervous, as you would with this massive round bird floating towards you. The elephants do sort of trumpet a little bit sometimes and move off, but I think they're more nervously curious. It's not a real terrible fear that they seem to have. They just move off a little bit. And you often also, when you float over birds of prey, they turning their head and looking up at the balloon. It's quite comical, really. They really do take an interest. But most of the animals just move off a little bit, because I think they're also getting used to these hot air balloons, or habituated, because it happens on a daily basis, unless there are really crazy conditions weather-wise, that they're not able to take off. But otherwise, I think they're quite relaxed. Now, Maria, you'd like to know if we've seen lions from the balloons and how do they respond? Yes, we have. We've seen quite a number of lions from the balloons on previous flights, and they also seem to just put their heads down in the grass and just try to remain unseen. But I think it was last year that on one of these particular flights, there was actually a lion kill witnessed from start to finish. So it was very exciting, and from a bird's eye view, it was absolutely amazing. I think we'll have to look in the archives of that video, or you can have a look online and Google it and see if you can find that video. But it was there not too long ago as well. There we're seeing there's a couple of adults and one a little bit younger. So it's not necessarily a breeding herd of elephants. That can quite easily be 2 adult males with a youngster. Sometimes they do. Well, the youngsters like to follow the adults. They do learn a lot from them, and it's like a father-son type figure. Even if it's not his father per se, they do learn a lot from the adult animals. And so even those solitary bulls, when they're moving around on their own, and then the teenager type bulls that are in the breeding herd leave the group, they very often do attach themselves to one or two other male elephants and move with them, and probably learn the ways of the wild, and learn from their experience where to go at what times, what to feed on, etc. It's not too difficult to work out what to feed on here in the Mara Triangle because of this very nutritious grass at the moment. Especially, these elephants are really in heaven in terms of their food. And I tell you, Mary, thank you for your comment, saying that this is such a therapeutic and rare way of viewing the Mara. Mary, it is absolutely stunning. It's out of this world, and it's very difficult to explain how fascinating it is. And the pilot is really good at his job. He sometimes brings us right down, tipping the tops of the grass, and at others just tipping the tops of the trees. You almost think that you might be hitting them, but he's got it all planned down to a T, especially our pilot here. He's been doing this for over 25 years, every morning. So a very lucky man, but very talented as well. And it's really a privilege to be up here. I think we're looking there on that dead tree. There's probably a couple of vultures. They really like using those well-exposed dead trees to roost on overnight. I wonder if that's a couple of lappet-faced vultures. Beautiful. Now they'll sit on there on the tree until that sun gets up a little bit, and then it will start to get those thermals rising as it warms up, and that's when the vultures normally put their wings out and use those bare patches on their chest to feel where the warm air currents are in the thermals, and then they'll turn and thermal in there, gaining a lot of height, as we do a little bit, and then they've got that beautiful view over the entire area, and they can spot where there's any blood or anything on the ground from even a couple of kilometers away, and then they will zone in on that and move down and find some carcass or food to feed on. And here it is truly amazing how we're drifting between the trees. A lot of different trees here along the drainage lines in Mara River. A lot of olive-type trees, the oleo species, with that kind of leaves on it. And in the trees, we might be lucky where we spot a leopard or something like that, but there can also be tree hyraxes and tree mice, all sorts living in there. But we also see some very nice nests from the different birds. Now we start to gain a little bit of altitude again. Now, Lynn, you're saying that you were in the Mara once and your landing wasn't so stable. Yes, Lynn, sometimes it can be a little bit bumpy, especially if there is quite a bit of wind. So as you can see at the moment, we've got very little wind here. So I do think that the landing is going to be quite soft. As we look in there on another raptor, it looked like a harrier of sorts, maybe a Montague harrier. I'm just seeing it briefly there. But yes, so once the balloon starts to go down, the pilot will prepare everybody, and you need to sit in a brace position, a little bit like you would in an aeroplane if they say that they're going for an emergency landing. So you just sit with your head braced against a cushion at the top. It's just to stop your head knocking back if the basket had to knock onto its side, for instance, because that's what would happen if there's a bit more wind. And speaking of landing, everybody, this experience has been absolutely wonderful, but we are going to be going down shortly, so we are going to be saying goodbye with a nice revolution there of Archie. It has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for joining us from this view from the Skyship's hot air balloon as we see the last vultures there. Thank you once again, and join us for another Safari Daily as we continue with trying to search out all the most amazing animals and sights and scenes in the Mara Triangle. Thank you, folks, and goodbye.